Welcome to the Political Insider. Before we kick off, please can I remind you to subscribe to the channel. Let's go and have a deep dive in the news and a look behind the news. Guess which department finally woke up? And that is our Department of International Relations and Cooperation. You know, one of those euphemistically named departments used to be called Foreign Affairs, but in South Africa we have to give it fancy names, which usually betrays exactly what that department was after. And they have got a Director General by the name of Zane Dangor, who seems to carry an outsized influence on our foreign policy. And he's a sort of a mercurial character, quiet, softly spoken, but he definitely seems to guide our foreign relations, which, as we know, seems to be, we know that the new South Africa was meant to be a human rights-based foreign relations. That was what came out in the Mandela era as what drives our foreign relations. But it seems to have developed over the years, even though we still say it's about human relations. We get to decide whose human rights we support. And generally, we support the human rights based on a couple of factors. Who the ANC were ideologically aligned to in the struggle, and basically anyone who is not from the Western Hemisphere. That seems to be what drives our international relations. And Zane Dangor didn't. He absolutely, definitely didn't disappoint in an interview that he did, where he was asked some straightforward questions, like, what is the view of DIRCO, the International Relations and Cooperations Department? What is their view of the recent strikes by the US and Israel on Iran and the killing of the leadership cohort of Iran? And Mr. Dangor immediately went into South African legalese because apparently we are the judge and jury of the world. We are the diviners of what is right and wrong. And sometimes what is right isn't right. Sometimes what is wrong isn't wrong. It depends very much on what we decide is right and wrong. So he condemned this part, these strikes, because he said it was illegal. Right? It's illegal because one country attacked another country. Now remember, 4 years ago now, Russia didn't just attack Ukraine, it was a full-blown invasion of a country. And I suppose to use by DIRCO's terms, you know, if it was what's a relationship status, it's complicated. In South Africa's terms there, it wasn't illegal, it was complicated. Right now, they found that they made no mention of the fact that Iran has been lobbing missiles at Israel for more than 2 decades. Apparently, that's not illegal, but these ones are illegal. So the fact that this killed the Ayatollah, I presume, is illegal, but when it kills civilians, then it's not illegal. So I'm not sure how our judge and jury stands on this one, but I'm no lawyer, but it does seem to be a little bit of selective justice. So the law states, this is according to Dangor, that you may not do a preemptive strike. In actual fact, you have to wait for the strike first, and then you can respond. And that response must be, DIRCO's favorite word, proportionate. Which brings us back to our justification of taking no action, or never voting against Russia. I'm trying to work out, because Russia's very justification for the invasion of Ukraine was that it was preemptive. They were worried about Ukraine cozying up to NATO. So they had to invade first before Ukraine became part of NATO. Now that apparently is not preemptive, but this is preemptive because that's the line coming out of Washington and Tel Aviv. They said, the Iranians are going to attack us, so we're going to attack them first. But apparently that is illegal. It seems like it's illegal depending on who does it. A bit like corruption in South Africa. It's illegal when some people do it, but not when others. And then the final punchline to the certainly on the Russian invasion of Ukraine was that even though we decided to abstain, we didn't agree with it. We know it was unlawful, but we decided not to condemn them. This was a vote held in the last month at the United Nations, where we were one of a handful of countries to not condemn Russia's ongoing invasion of Ukraine. To their credit, Turkey has classified the Iranian retaliatory strikes on neighboring Gulf states as unjustified and equally illegal. Right, he kept on going about this proportionate situation. Basically, if somebody bombs your country with 10 missiles, you should count them and then respond with 10 missiles. So you can't send back, if they attack you with 10 missiles, you can't attack them with 100 missiles. So, in other words, when those Hamas terrorists came over the fence and slaughtered Israelis and killed, 3,500 people, basically, when in the retaliation, Israel should have stopped at a similar number, because that's most proportionate. And the whole basis of our case at the ICJ was that it was genocide because the response was disproportionate. Now, we have seen Iran literally blow those missiles up in number. I presume Zain Dango is counting the missiles so that the responses are proportionate, because this is a very important thing. Only proportionate responses. So the fact that those countries attacked one place and Iran has attacked many places, not sure if that's disproportionate or if just the missiles are proportionate. Because we've got to either say that disproportionality is either the number of countries you bomb in return, or the number of missiles you fire, or the size of the missiles, or the body count. Mr. Dango should clarify proportionality, because it's we're the global judge and jury, and he clearly understands what this means. Now, apparently this is how war works. So when one country invades another with 100 aircraft, and the other country can only defend with 100 aircraft, but you've got to wait for them to attack first, unless you like their reason for attacking, in which case it's all fine. Dango goes on to say that Iran presented no military threat because talks were underway, and this was true. Talks were underway about their nuclear program. But apparently those missiles that Iran kept on launching, that is not a military threat. I presume that those missiles that Iran has been firing have been filled with streamers, confetti. I don't know, but apparently they presented no military threat. This is a country that sponsors terrorism around the world, where their proxies in Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, kill people. But apparently they presented no military threat. Okay? Then when the conversation moved on as to why South Africa had not condemned Iran's crackdown on protesters, you've got to hear this one. Dango replied that after a week of the protests, South Africa issued a statement saying that they promote the fundamental freedoms of Iranians to protest. But he wouldn't condemn them. He condemned the state's actions, and they abstained on the vote because apparently there's an independent investigation as to whether these protests had been provoked from outside and whether the protesters were armed, because there were reports of some police personnel from Iran getting killed by the protesters. And he's got videos. Now, once again, I don't know about you, but this seems to be questionable. I haven't heard this, but hey, I've heard this out of two people's mouths. That's Zain Dango and Carl Niehaus, saying that the protesters were in fact armed and they were firing back. But if they were firing back, if they were killing those policemen, surely then the response from the police should be proportional. So in other words, if you killed 5 policemen, then maybe you can only stop at 5 protesters. but we hear stories about tens of thousands of protesters getting gunned down. So once again, this proportionality, the reason that we didn't condemn a government killing its citizens is very, very much up for Zane Dangore's interpretations of the world. And I don't know. But apparently we are waiting for an independent investigation as to whether these protesters were in fact working on behalf of some foreign agents and they were armed to the teeth. Now, I'm not sure, and he wasn't very clear on who is conducting this independent investigation. You know, which body is going in there to investigate? Are they going to set up a commission? Maybe we can lend them Justice Madlanga to head up a commission to find out whether the protesters were, you know, these guys do not have their own free will. Why would anybody be unhappy with the Ayatollah? Why would anybody in Iran be unhappy as to being told how you must dress, where women can work, what schools they can go to? But apparently there is an independent investigation. We just don't know who's doing it. But Mr. Dangor knows, and I'm sure by now, pretty soon, he'll be sharing it with the rest of us. So we finally get to understand that we will not condemn Russia for invading Ukraine because it's complicated. We will not condemn Iran, firstly, for killing their protesters, because maybe they were armed. We will condemn Israel and the USA for attacking Iran. We're even going to condemn Iran for striking other countries that didn't attack them in the first place. That's our position. So there you go. If you wanted to know what South Africa's position is, I got you covered. But remember, if you're traveling to the Middle East, there are thousands of South Africans who are stranded in the Middle East. They are there and they can't get back because obviously I wouldn't want to get onto a jet when there are missiles flying around. But it turns out that your travel insurance doesn't cover you in the case of war, especially in the Middle East. Like, you've got to say, guys, you know, there's not enough insurance in the world that will insure you against a war breaking out in the Middle East. So thousands of South Africans, and you may know a couple, and please drop it down, let us know in the comments, who are stranded in those countries. There are embassies that will try and help you in South Africa, and there's no jokes. And there are such a thing starting as safe flights, where apparently the passenger jets will be, they have military jets flying next to them to get out of the troubled airspace. But it's going to be a long process getting people out there. It is a global travel hub, and it's created chaos. But at least Etihad Airlines, Emirates, and Qatar Airlines are reimbursing their travelers. So our sympathies go to people who are stranded there. They didn't know that this was going to start, but it has started. Tell you what's about to start, and this is your last chance. Our State of the Nation breakfast with Helen Ziller and political analyst Sandile Swana. Last couple of days to go. This happens on Friday morning in Kramerville in Sandton. Come and join us. If you want more information, go to our website, sona.co.za. Book your seat. Come and join us at the breakfast. Let's see what's going to happen in Johannesburg after the next local government election. A very brief trip to the Madlanga Commission, where they heard from Deputy National Police Commissioner Tabelo Masakile. And she was the person who was actually acting police commissioner on the fateful day on New Year's Eve in 2024, December the 31st, 2024, when out of the blue, our Minister of Netflix, Senzo Mchunu, decided to write a letter saying, you must disband the political killings task team now. She got this email and thought it was a joke because it came from a private Gmail address. And there had been no debate about this particular topic. She really didn't know what to do with this letter that lands in her inbox on the day before New Year. Her boss, the police commissioner, is on holiday. The minister's on holiday. But the guys who knew what to do about it were Senzo Mchunu's chief of staff, Cedric Nkabinda, and Gauteng Hawks head Shadrack Sibiya, who immediately went over the top, bypassing her authority to act on this letter. Of course, one of the first things that did happen was the letter was sent to the criminal syndicates, and we know that through the WhatsApps, of Kat Matlala. So, everybody thought this was a joke. Even the police commissioner, who then didn't act for 2 months. So much for the minister saying you've got to do this immediately. And to sum it up, the testimony of General Mosakile, there's little doubt that this whole incident was complete and utter political interference in policing work. The question is why? And even having heard from Minister Senzo Mchunu at the commission, we're still no closer to understanding why he would do this. It is so out of character, so out of line. It wasn't their most expensive or their least effective task team, but for some reason he felt the need to act. The one person that enraged was Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, and when he saw that some action was being taken usually by people who were compromised, he did what he did in July of last year, and that's why we sit with the commission. So not a lot of light set on this. If anything, more understanding that this was just a complete and utter mess. Let's close off with a look at what has been in the news over the last couple of days, and there seems to be renewed enthusiasm for the campaign for Patrice Motsepe to run for ANC presidential candidate. It seems like there are some people who are known who are behind this campaign. And this campaign must be real. And the reason this campaign must be real is because ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula has been enraged by this and criticized the campaign, written strongly worded letters to say this is not the way we do things. Basically, this is a guy who has got his own eyes set on the position of leader of the ANC, and he doesn't want a credible candidate to run against him, especially one that is not tainted by corruption and the usual mess inside the ANC. So who are these people who are behind Motsepe's campaign? Well, it seems like two names have emerged. One is the spokesman for NSFAS. That's the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, Ishmael Mnisi. He seems to be one of the people most outspoken, as well as Reverend Thulani Ngesi. They seem to be two of the movers, and in fact, they seem to be the people behind the PM27 website. And it's interesting that you should have somebody who's involved in youth politics, i.e. student funding, and one that is in the church, because those are two very big constituencies that might help any presidential candidate. In true ANC tradition, Patrice Motsepe hasn't confirmed or denied whether he is behind this, in, out, sideways, who knows. He is dead quiet. Question, of course, is does this save the ANC or not? And I suspect a lot depends on, and you're not going to hear much out of Patrice Motsepe until we start seeing where the land lies, and the local government elections could have a big say in this, because should the ANC lose more than what they lost in the last election, and they lose the big cities and big towns, they become a rural, declining party. And then nobody, not even Patrice Motsepe, with all the money in the world, is going to want to get too involved. If the ANC don't do as badly as that, if they come in somewhere around the sort of numbers that they got in the last general election, there may be something to rescue in almost a new candidate going in as the GNU candidate to work closely with those GNU parties. That's where the relationship seems to be working a lot better. And given that there is no obvious presidential candidate out of the other GNU parties, especially out of the biggest of the GNU parties, i.e. the DA, that could credibly be put forward as a presidential candidate, it's likely that the leader of the ANC will remain as president if the GNU stays together. So in many ways, if there is a credible ANC candidate, he could become the president anyway, because who else becomes the question. So This would be the motivation then for Motsepe to stay in. And he would work a lot better with the GNU coming from the outside. And he's probably more palatable a candidate than the current Deputy President, Paul Mashatile, or the court jester, Fikile Mbalula. Another big factor could be the fact that Motsepe happens to have a sister who's married to our current president, Cyril Ramaphosa, and Cyril Ramaphosa would love to have somebody in the union buildings who may be a little lenient when those pala court papers arrive on his desk. So that may be a little bit of family insurance by putting the brother-in-law in charge, and maybe he keeps you out of jail. That's all we have from the Political Insider today. Thank you so much for joining us. Subscribe to the channel. We'll see you again soon.